Well, one of the more entertaining questions that I think we got this week is, what are some mistakes that people make when marketing their businesses online?
Okay. Where do we start? How much time do we have, right?
I don't
Okay,
know.
so let's just start from the basics, right? Essentially, when people get started on social media, it's I have to be on social media, so I'm just gonna put some stuff out there. There's no thought behind it. It's not representative of the goals that they're trying to hit. And so they just really don't have a strategy. They don't have a content strategy. They don't have a calendar or promotional strategy. They really are just putting content out there just to put it on social media. And then it doesn't perform well. Shocker. I know, you're shocked by that. But it doesn't perform well because there was no thought behind it. So to fix that mistake, essentially, you have to really kind of look at like a bird's eye view of, I want to be on social media for the purpose of what? Am I building an audience? Am I trying to get more traffic to my website? Am I trying to get more sales in my business, right? And then once you have your core, like your absolute, your mission, these are the goals that we are trying to hit with social media, then you kind of have to go backwards and then backfill it, right? So it's like, I know what I want to do. Now you create a content strategy. If you really want to build a huge audience, then everything that you post is going to have calls to action to help you grow your audience, right? Every post then has intention and a goal and objective behind it. So there's a reason for posting what you're posting to help you hit your overall goal. And when I ask people most of the time, like, what's your social media strategy? Their answer is,
I don't have a social media strategy.
exactly. And so we have to then sit them down, have long conversations, tell them what to do. So I think the first mistake, the biggest mistake, is probably just having no social media strategy whatsoever, and they're not posting intentionally to hit their goals and objectives.
And I think the second biggest mistake, and maybe sometimes the most fun, is that people forget that social media is designed to be social.
Yes, sir.
You have to think about it as a conversation that you're having with other people.
Yes.
So in that conversation, we have sort of a fun story about a really high-profile client we had when we were starting out in our business, and they talked about themselves in the third person. Well, anytime you're talking with someone who is referring to themselves in the third person, it doesn't appear to be social, right? So rule number one with social media, don't have a plan. Rule number two, don't talk about yourself in the third person. And I think rule number three is right along those same lines. So again, social media is meant to be social. Think about it from your audience's perspective, and don't just blast them with your promos every day, all day long. You have to mix in engaging content that people want to see and read and hear or view. Some of our, I love real estate agents. We have a ton in our platform. We've helped a bunch of people get a bigger audience. But a lot of real estate agents, they just think that all they need to do is post their open houses or the listings that they've sold, and that's all they do, over and over and over and over and over again. Well, think about it from the audience's perspective. Do you follow anyone who only posts about their sales or their business? Probably not.
No.
Yeah. So don't do that. Don't be that guy. Don't be that person. Whether you have a direct sale campaign going, don't just post about that. Talk about how it's been effective in your life, or connect it somehow to your family or whatever's important to you personally, so that people can get a little bit of a taste of who you are and what makes you tick. And that way, it's a two-way conversation, and people feel really actively engaged and social with you.
And I think that just ties back into mistake number one, right? No plan, no strategy, you're not hitting your goals, and that's kind of where it ends. But I think there's one more mistake.
And what would that be?
Well, when it comes to social media, I think people make the mistake of thinking that, or it's a mindset maybe, where they don't treat the people that are engaging with their content like real people, right? They're collectors. They like likes. They're not engaging with people. And I think one of the biggest mistakes is that people don't actually talk to their audience. They're there to collect more likes, more fans, more followers, more clicks, more buys, and things like that. And what happens is you end up missing this like massive piece of connection. And so I always like to tie it back to this. If you had an actual brick and mortar store where someone walked in and they said, "Hey, I love your clothes," you wouldn't just stare at them like, right? You would say, "Thank you. Is there anything I can help you with today?" And it's the same with social media. It's the exact same thing. So people, they're like, "Oh my gosh, someone left me a comment. I got all this engagement. What do I do?" And I just say, "Well, what would you do if they were standing in front of you right now? What would you say then? And they get it. It's like they just unlock this block that they have about social media. Yes, it's on the internet, but treat people like the internet isn't there. Treat them like they're right in front of you, and I promise you will start building more relationships than you will know what to do with. And it will be the best thing that you did your social media yet.
I think another mistake that's relatively stupid is when people use their social media platforms to just vent about any mild frustration in their life or in their business. Now, there was a trend going around for a while. It was the FML trend, right? It was, post something ridiculous like, I got stuck in traffic this morning, FML, right? Which stands for fuck my life. And,
beep.
Yeah, it's like, really? You got stuck in traffic, so fuck your life. I mean, like, I really hope that there are more valuable things in your life than just how efficiently you move through the streets. Now, I'm not saying don't be controversial. I'm not saying don't be vulnerable. I'm not saying don't share what's actually going on in your life, but don't just have a consistently negative tone about all of the obstacles that you're facing over and over and over again. If you want to share the obstacle, fine, share that obstacle, but share kind of what you're doing to overcome that obstacle. Or if you're sharing, ask yourself, why am I sharing this? So if you're sharing it because you need some advice or some help, say that. And it won't appear like you're just bitching or pissing and moaning. It will actively engage your audience. It'll take something that is inherently negative and it'll solicit a response that's, saying like, hey, here's how I overcame that, or here's what I do, or here's something I read that might be helpful for you in this circumstance. So it's social media. It's not a bitching platform. If you are going to share something that is troublesome in your life, do it in a way that solicits the right feedback and response from your audience.
I love that. That's such a good one. And then I've got 2 more mistakes. So as Brian was saying, social media is not your diary. Okay? So if you're building a personal brand, just remember that it's not your diary. Hey, woke up, had orange juice for breakfast. That's great. But your audience probably doesn't care, right? Go back to mistake number 1, which is you have no strategy, you have no plan, your content doesn't hit your goals. And then the only other thing I want to leave people with is this. Every comment you put on social media, before you write it and before you hit publish, okay, because the minute you hit publish, you can't take it back. But I want you to remember that anything you post on social media, you better be comfortable with that being on the front page of every single newspaper, timeline, media platform before you hit publish. So if you're thinking of responding to a customer, or something went on and you're frustrated and you're putting stuff online and you're complaining about a situation or you're saying something, if you are comfortable with that being broadcast everywhere, then go ahead and hit publish. But if you wouldn't want it shared with everyone, your kids, your mom, your dad, then I wouldn't hit publish. So always keep that in mind when it comes to social media.
Yeah, and I think what your advice is telling people isn't to shy away from things that are controversial or to be inauthentic in any way. I think what you're saying is don't react emotionally, and so what happens for businesses sometimes on social media is they have, somebody who had a bad customer experience, or maybe that nuisance client who has sort of repeatedly, hit you with messaging at a frustrated time. Don't respond in anger or in the moment emotionally. Think about, what you want other people to see and gain from this experience. And so respond with kindness and take the higher ground and think about, if this were published, would it help my brand or would it damage my brand, right? If this negative review and my response was broadcast all over the world, would that draw more people to my brand or would it turn people away? We all know that sometimes there are critics and reviewers online who are unreasonable. We all have had clients or customers that...
Never.
Yeah. Well, we haven't, but other people have. And so when you see somebody's response to a comment like that, just, I think that says a lot about who they are, and you can actually find that that in that negative, you can turn it into a positive, where how you respond when something bad has happened actually draws more people to your brand or increases your credibility or, whatever else might be out there.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a lot of mistakes, guys. So we'll have to do a social media mistakes part 2 so that we can cover some other mistakes. And of course, remember, the goal of this isn't to identify all of the mistakes that people are making, but to give you guys tips and actionable strategies that you can use to fix those mistakes so that you get better results and you're more successful with social media.
Right.